Should you open a mobile IV therapy business or a storefront infusion business? I'm going to give you all the details on both. That way you have all the information to decide which route you want to go. So this is for all my nurses. I am Tiffany. I own a mobile infusion business. So let's get started. Mobile. What is the difference with mobile and storefront? Personally, it really comes down to where you live. So I live in Oklahoma. Infusions are not crazy popular here. I would say there's probably maybe 15 infusion places in my whole city. And that sounds like a lot, but it's really not. And of that, I would say maybe only like 5 or 6. I could be wrong, but whenever you Google, that's really all that pops up. Do mobile, but they're more, it's like their concierge service. So where I am at, the reason I am doing mobile versus storefront is because it really saves me a lot of money doing mobile, but also I have found patients love being able to not leave their home and you just going to them. So with mobile, here's the kind of the pros and cons. So the pros are going to be it is a lot less overhead to start up. It is a lot less monthly overhead to maintain. When I say that, it is in the beginning, it was like 2 or 3, maybe 4 infusions that I had to do a whole month to pay the bills. Now I think it's 5. It hasn't really gone up much. It's gone up a little bit just because I market more now, but it's very cheap overhead wise. It's so much easier to staff because I just put my availability and now I have 2 nurses that work for me, so they kind of fill in the gaps and are kind of on call. It's really if I have something that pops up, I just send a group message if I can't do it and ask if they can do it. So you don't have to staff a full-time nurse. They just get paid off of per infusion or per visit that they do. So that will save you a lot of money as well because you don't have to staff the clinic. Also, the other big thing really is your patients a lot of times will prefer it. I've had other people tell me, hey, I've done an infusion before, and especially if they're sick, a lot of times people don't want to leave their house. So for you being able to go to the comfort of their house, it just makes it a lot more personable and convenient. So what are the cons? The cons are if you do have a mobile infusion business, you can only do so many at a time, right? You can only do so many per house. So sometimes it is good because you can do infusion parties and you can do several people at once and you'll make more money. But if you're just doing, I would say if I'm doing a full day of infusions, I probably can do 6 the whole day. And that's just working from, normal hours, maybe 9 a.m. to maybe 5 or 6. It really depends on what infusion I'm giving since some of them can take longer. So you have to kind of see, it really needs to align with what your goals are. How big are you trying to grow? On the flip side of it, I would rather hire more nurses and have more nurses running different teams as well. So I would rather be doing my infusions and then having another 2 nurses, 3 nurses, 4 nurses doing the same thing versus having them all at a clinic. That is my personal opinion. I think it's just easier to staff and a lot less overhead. And I really have just seen how much my patients love it. But I also live in a safe area too. And a lot of times, since we are self-pay, that is something that I get. Do you feel safe going into these houses? I have a plan, obviously, if something were to happen, kind of like with home health. You kind of have a backup plan, like, what if something happens? What do I do? But we live in a very safe area, and a lot of times you're not going to have, it's not really, you don't have as many patients. I've actually never had, because we're self-pay, people only book it that are kind of that clientele, if that makes sense. We do have, I've been to maybe 1 or 2 houses that were questionable, and I would just say if you feel uncomfortable at all, then don't go in. The houses that I went to, it was some referrals of some people who were dehydrated and they were trying to save a trip to urgent care. And of course, I went and helped them. I love helping people, and of course, I went to go do it. But you also have to be very mindful about the location you're in and if there's any like weird vibes that you're getting. That is kind of the only kind of caveat to being mobile. Um, I mean, that really is the only downside. And another, I guess, downside is, so you can see in the back, to stay compliant, we have to be under the immediate use compounding. So what this means is that when we mix an infusion, which it has to be made on the stainless steel table, and there's some other guidelines that you have to follow too. I cover all of this in my course. Don't be like, what is she talking about? So if you decide to take it, you will know all the things, but they're only good for 4 hours. So you do have to be strategic about how you are going to mix everything, and sometimes it can cost you an extra trip, but I still 100% hands down would do mobile over Storefront. So let's jump to Storefront. What are the pros of Storefront? The pros are going to be, you have a storefront, obviously, so especially if you're in a good location, you're going to have people driving by it every day. And so it's kind of marketing on its own because they see you. So this, over a long period of time, can really help with your business, especially if you're doing marketing and stuff on top of it. Another pro is, obviously, if you're busy, you can see more patients in a day having a storefront and having, 10, 15 people in there than doing so many a day mobile. The cons, really the big thing, is that you have a lot more startup. If you are doing it not franchising, it will be cheaper, but you're still going to have, say maybe a $2,000, $3,000 rent that you have to pay on top of the electricity, the water. Really, it just depends on your location, because some places are going to be more expensive than others. So that already starts where you're going to have to pay, at least if you want your business to pay for it, which is the best way, so you're not continuing to go into debt, you're going to have to do, let's just do math. We're just going to do 3,000. But if just say each of your infusions are like 175, you have to do at least 17 infusions a month just to cover the rent. And that might not be unrealistic the longer you're open, but in the beginning, that really can cause a lot of stress. So if you have a backup plan for how you're going to pay that, or have some stockpiled money for until you get busy, this could be a good option. Another con is, obviously, you have to staff a nurse. And although yes, you will pay a nurse less than what you work in the hospital, I have found on both sides it is hard to find nurses that want to learn and are good employees. And it's really sad to say that, but I think so many nurses kind of underestimate what goes into infusions. They're like, oh, I love to start IVs, I can do this. Yes, that is part of it, but there's also a lot of education that goes on it. Think about when you're in the hospital. If you are giving a medication, you are responsible for being able to educate on the medication, know the side effects and how it works. It's the same thing when you're giving vitamins and peptides, but I think a lot of times that gets forgotten. And whenever you hire people that realize they need to know all this, especially since it's not common knowledge and stuff that was taught in nursing school, there's a period that we went through like 3 nurses in a couple weeks, and it's just trying to find the right nurse. And since obviously you pay a lot less too, because it's more of a clinic job, it can just be harder to find nurses who are okay making that. A lot of the nurses that you might know already work in the hospital, so although you might know a lot of nurses, they're still used to that hospital pay, so it can be kind of hard sometimes trying to find a good fit. Not saying it cannot happen, but that can be a challenge. And I have faced that. And there's also been a couple other of my students that already have infusion companies that take my class to kind of learn more of like the specifics of vitamins and how you like dosing and how you treat them. But they have had the similar issues with trying to staff nurses. Storefront can be way better than mobile, but it kind of just depends what your goals are, how big you're wanting to grow, and X, Y, and Z. So that is kind of the difference between mobile and Storefront, and also if you're going to franchise Storefront versus doing it on your own. Either way, franchising is going to be the most expensive route, and I personally, this is just, you don't have to do this, but I think it is so much more worth it not to franchise and do all the research in the beginning, because one, it'll save you so much money when you do get started up, because you're not having to pay this company however much money or royalties or whatever till you get paid back or have their name. And you can be a lot more customizable, which I really love that. I kind of don't want someone to dictate what we can and cannot do as a business. And so, yes, it'll be more work up front, but it is 100% worth it in the back. One more thing on mobile, it is so much easier to pay it back. For example, we started May of 2024. I quit my bedside nursing job. It was about 6 months in. Personally, how we did it, I did not want to pay ourselves from the company until we paid off our business. So I still worked, but I was able to leave bedside because my bedside just wasn't as flexible anymore. So I went from hospital to home health where I was able to cut down and it was very flexible. I was doing it 1 to 2 days a week, maybe 4 to 6 hours a day. So I still needed something, but the hospital just began to be too much along with trying to run a business. So after I actually cut down on home health, I tried to quit. Let me just say, I actually tried to quit in March and they asked if I would stay on there and work once every 90 days. And I said yes to that. So in my mind, I quit it, but I have not quit the job yet, but I just work once every 90 days. But essentially, I do this full time now. And I was able to do that and pay off our business in 11 months. And that is the beauty because mobile IV therapy, I always guesstimate between 10 and 15,000 is how much it is to start up. And if you do the math, and your infusions are, I'm just going to say $175. That's probably low depending on where you're at. For Oklahoma, it is average, but I've had students who are able to charge double that because of their location. Must be nice. But if you did 15,000 divided by, actually, let's just say 200, that might be a little bit more. That's 75 infusions. You can pay your business off if you do 75 infusions. Divide that into 1 year, that is 6.25, just say 7 infusions a month. I know you have expenses that you have to do, but if you just think about I have to do at least 6 infusions a month, I can pay off my business and then do this full time. And in my course, I teach how you can successfully start up your business, but then I also teach how you can make it a reoccurring monthly revenue that is growing because that ultimately is going to be the best because it's going to help your patients, especially the protocols that we have set up where they feel great, but also you're making money from it. So it's a win-win for both. And whenever you have recurrent monthly revenue and it continues to grow, you don't start back to the first of the month and you might have had, $20,000 month and you're back to square one with maybe 2 infusions on the book for the next month. That is a stressful feeling. So it is so much better to run off of memberships, and there's so many ways that you can build reoccurrent monthly revenue than just doing one-time infusions, and I love teaching on that too. So I hope, minus my little tangents, that kind of answered your question on is mobile IV therapy or is brick and mortar kind of the best option to do. Follow me for more. I give all the tips and tricks on mobile IV therapy startup.